It's our first CHFA podcast. Welcome to Now and Then, an insight into the changing now regulations in Canada and the impact it will have on your business. Each month, we'll give you insight into what has changed in the world of politics, policy, and regulations, and how they'll impact your business.
I'm Ashley Cornell, Director of Regulatory Affairs and Policy at CHFA.
And I'm Lindsay Walker, VP of Marketing and Communications at CHFA. And together, we're aiming to break down the complex world of regulations across Canada and internationally so your business can be best prepared to navigate them. In every episode, we'll be taking some of the hottest topics from our CHFA Regulatory Report, a monthly newsletter we share with CHFA members, and break them down into a less technical, more understandable way, so even if you aren't a regulatory person, you get a better understanding of what's happening.
Whether you're starting a new business in the natural, organic, and wellness industry, part of an established company, or just curious about how regulations can impact your business, this is the podcast for you.
So grab a coffee, hit that follow button, and let's get started. So, Ashley, this is a very exciting month to start a podcast because there has been a lot of things happening in our nation's capital. The Prime Minister stepped down, Parliament is prorogued until March 24th, a Liberal leadership race is underway, and a spring election seems more than likely at this point. It means big changes for Canadians and Canadian businesses. We're in Ottawa regularly lobbying for our members and the industry. So what does this all mean for us as an industry?
The progress we made with Bill 368, which distinguishes natural health products from drugs and the monitoring oversight that is required for drugs, will remain. So that's to say that it will retain its place in the legislative process. However, for any additional updates, we will have to wait until the government returns at the end of March. NHPD has also confirmed that cost recovery changes will still move forward.
So I guess for people who maybe don't know as much about NHP regulations or maybe just kind of listening for the first time, the NHPD is the department that oversees the regulation of natural health products, or NHPs, in Canada. So I'm just curious, can they still operate even though Parliament's prorogued?
Yeah, they can. So only new legislation or amendments that would require a debate or approval in Parliament will be on hold until Parliament reconvenes. So when Parliament is prorogued, civil service and federal departments like NHPD, they're able to continue their day-to-day operations because they work with already existing laws and regulations. So regulations that have been completed through a consultation or the consultation drafting stage, like cost recovery, for example, they can still be published in Canada Gazette, provided all the necessary approvals are in place. So this just means that the proposed cost recovery updates can still move forward despite government being prorogued, and NHPD have indicated that the NHP labeling discussions are expected to continue in the coming weeks as well.
So this really is a critical moment for our industry, or really for anyone who cares about natural health products or NHPs in Canada. So really, now is the time to keep the pressure up. Let your MP know that you have concerns. And we have a lot of great tools you can use to educate yourself more on the issues if this is new to you. Also, a really easy way to contact your MP if you head to saveoursupplements.ca. That is a lot for the NHP industry, though, but I'm curious, on the food side, how have all these changes in government and Parliament impacted that side of the industry?
Yeah, so there's some things that are expected to be delayed and other things will continue on as expected. So the Organic Standards Review is expected to proceed unaffected. Health Canada's review of comments from the food packaging program consultation should remain ongoing. As I mentioned, work can continue, but we are observing, I would say, a bit more hesitation. So the food regulatory modernization efforts, which include updates to foods for special dietary use and gluten-free foods, was recently open for a pre-consultation comment period. This may see delays in advancing through Canada Gazette Part 1.
So I guess keeping kind of in the same vein within food, but switching gears a little bit, you mentioned food modernization, and before the government prorogued, there was some interesting changes that happened, particularly in December. Health Canada and the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, they released new food standard regulations. So what do those mean for the industry?
Yeah, so these were made to provide a more responsive and adaptive regulatory framework. So, as part of modernization, Health Canada is looking at the food regulations, how they can make changes so they adapt with changes in science and technology. So, the framework for updating the food compositional standards, it was done to support growth and innovation in the industry. Specifically, what they did was take the food standards, which are the set of criteria that kind of specify what a food product must contain and kind of in what proportions in order to be able to call it by its name. They took those standards out of the regulations themselves and incorporated them by reference, which is often referred to as an IBR.
So I have to ask, because I am not a regulatory person, what does IBR mean and what are the impacts?
Yeah, so it means incorporated by reference, and what it means, I guess, in the regulatory world, it's just kind of a way for departments like Health Canada to include external documents like technical standards or guidance into law or regulation without including them directly in the regulatory text. So instead, what will happen, they'll be taken out of the regulatory text and referred to or referenced in a separate document. So in doing this, the external document becomes legally binding as if it were written into the regulations. But updating the regulations can be a very lengthy and complicated process. So this allows for updates to happen to those documents without having to go through the full process of updating the regulations themselves. I know that's still probably complicated, but hopefully that helps to explain it a little bit better.
So, okay, so let me see if I can say it back to you, because maybe that's the litmus test. An IBR is a common practical tool in the regulatory field. It's important to understand that it effectively extends legal obligations beyond to include whatever external document is being cited.
Yeah, and I will say, so that's correct. It kind of simplifies things at first glance, but it can also introduce kind of a layer of complexity. And instead of, reading a single rule, you might need to consult multiple documents, each with its own set of requirements. So companies or individuals trying to follow the regulations or, are subject to the regulations, they need to ensure that they have the correct version of whatever document is incorporated by reference, and make sure that they're not using outdated standards, because this will inadvertently make you fall out of compliance.
So are there any tools to help the industry navigate this?
CFIA will be updating the industry labeling tool and the automated import reference system, probably in the coming weeks. Additionally, I believe they have indicated that a search tool will be made available to help kind of navigate these revised documents for the standards. I don't know exactly when that will be, but it's to come, and we'll stay on top of it. And once we hear, we can keep our members informed.
So beyond the tools themselves, though, like when has this all come into play?
Well, it's already in force. So it came into force in December, I think around December 18th. And a transition period wasn't provided for this because the content itself isn't changing. It's just a matter of where it's being found. So there aren't any changes to the enforcement or inspection, anything like that, or to the standards themselves. It's more related to where the information can be found.
Awesome. Okay. Lots of things happening. It's going to set up my segue for another place where lots of things are happening, which is south of the border. obviously a lot going on down there, and probably too much for us to talk about in this podcast. But there are a few things that I think listeners in our industry really should know about. And the first one is coming out of the U.S.A, specifically the Food and Drug Administration, or the FDA. They have updated their definition of healthy, specifically for food labeling. So what is this definition, and kind of what's behind the change?
Yeah, so to use the word healthy or label your product, the words healthy, a food now has to include specific amounts of recommended food groups like fruit, veggies, grains, low-fat dairy. Plus, on top of that, it has to stay within limits for added sugar, saturated fat, sodium. And the details of those levels depend on the product and the serving size of the product themselves.
So I did catch a little wind of this. So I just want to fact check something with you. I think if I'm reading it correctly, or if I'm understanding it correctly, things like dried and powdered fruits and vegetables, they now count the same as whole fruits and veggies. And anything like coffee or tea, for example, something that's under 5 calories per serving, can also qualify under this definition. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, that's our understanding as well. Dietary supplements now have to meet the same standard.
So I think obviously a lot of changes for industry, some updates to labels and things like that, which is definitely no small feat. But it also sounds like this is the right step for consumers to help find better for you options, which is always great. I think another thing that I think is positive, I mean, I'm interested to hear your perspective on, for consumer health, is around red dye number 3. It was quite buzzy in the news. The FDA banning it, saying it can no longer be used in products. So does that impact us in Canada at all? Can we use it here? Kind of what's the lay of the land on this side of the border?
Yeah, so just as a bit of background, so red number 3 was already not permitted for use in Europe, and now we're also seeing it being banned in the U.S. So, as part of CHFA representing the natural, organic, and wellness industry, I would say that it sounds like you're encouraged, I'm encouraged to see this shift in government regulations that are better aligning with, consumer demands and kind of evolving scientific insights. Um, it does remain permitted in Canada. However, specific to the Canadian natural, organic, and wellness industry, we already adhere to much higher or more strict standards, such as the Whole Foods banned ingredient list, which excludes red number 3. So this is kind of just another example of, yes, it's permitted in Canada, but it's another example of how our industry, or the natural, organic, and wellness industry, continues to set higher standards, like outpacing what we're seeing in national policy. We are encouraged that it's happening on the international scene, and we hope that Health Canada remains open to revisiting their position as some research strengthens that they're looking to see.
I think you're right, though. Another area where this industry leads, we didn't really use it, so that's great for us and great for consumers as these regulations change. So again, what a time to launch a new podcast around politics and everything like that. It is kind of hard to talk about things that are happening in the U.S. and not talk about the new Trump administration. As we're recording this, Trump has just resumed office. And we know, we're hearing from our members, there is a lot of anxiety as he resumes the role, especially around tariffs and trade relations in the U.S. So just a bit of an update from our side of things. CHFA is actively working with the Canadian Chamber of Commerce to have our members' concerns heard. We're also reaching out to our network of incredible associate members to spread the word on educational resources that our members can tap into to help navigate this changing time. Things are changing by the moment, by day, it feels like. So we're definitely doing a lot of work to keep everyone informed and provide resources that can best help everyone, like I said, kind of wade these waters, uncharted territory. So definitely check out chfa.ca and make sure you're following us on social and checking out our channels to keep up with the latest news. So I think that was a lot to cover, but we did it. Episode 1, season 1. I want to say there is a lot more amazing topics coming to our CHFA regulatory report. I am in a privileged position that I get a glimpse of it before it hits the inboxes. Some really cool things I think we discussed on this edition, like how Brazil is leveraging AI to crack down on non-compliant ad claims, and how the EU is proposed safe fluoride intake levels. For our CHFA members, the regular written report is going to hit your inbox on the last Wednesday of each month. But this is new for us. So if you have a certain topic or you want to explore something a little bit further or have an idea you want us to tackle, definitely get in touch with us. We'd love to hear from our members. We're here for you. So email us at regulatory@chfa.ca and we'll do our best to get to it. So I think that's it. That's a wrap for our very first episode. We hope you liked it. Again, give us a follow and we hope you join us next month.
See you next month.